oh my God, another article saying that vegans are going to die from eating plant-based meat, or oat milk is like Coca-Cola, or orange juice is packed with sugar. There's a bit of a pattern with a lot of these people. They're unqualified, completely untrained when it comes to nutritional science. They are behaving in ways which are, frankly, in my opinion, should be illegal. Because these people are operating on social media, which is the Wild West at the moment.
Yeah, truly unregulated.
I just had enough of it. End of last year, the Freedom Food Alliance was born. People can only make good choices when they're informed.
Absolutely.
And if they're constantly being misinformed, wherever they look, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, social media, billboards, people are constantly being pushed in directions away from a diet that is better for them. What's the truth? Who do you believe? Our job is to try to help you understand, if someone is telling you X, is there an agenda behind that, or is that actually factual or not?
Hello and welcome back to the Inspire Action podcast. I'm Ciara Doyle, and today I'm speaking with the multi-talented Robbie Lockie, co-founder of Plant-Based News and more recently the co-founder of the Freedom Food Alliance, which is working to build a more transparent food system. I'm super excited about this one, and Robbie and I could have spoken for hours. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Robbie Lockie. Okay, hello. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Robbie. Can you give us a brief introduction in your own words, who you are, what you do, and how we've kind of gotten here today?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And, as I was saying, this is my first interview in a long time. I've been head down with my new endeavors and projects. So, yeah, it's really exciting to chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you are the co-founder of Plant-Based News, which is one of the, for those who don't know, one of the biggest, I think, in the world, digital media platforms for talking about the benefits of veganism on the planet, on animals, and also for human health. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with that? Let's go way back even. Start with your upbringing. How did you get into veganism? Did you grow up vegan or have any vegan influences in your life? How did you get to where you are now?
Wow, yeah. So quite a long story, but I'll do my best to kind of condense it. So I grew up in a small farm in the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe in Africa, to two very, very young parents, and very much an agricultural community in society where eating animals and rearing animals was just a normal part of life. Ate meat with every meal, and a very sort of British colony type, because it was Zimbabwe was a British colony, and I grew up in a very kind of meat and two veg kind of culture, and food wasn't really a big part of our lives in the sense that it is here in the UK. We weren't really foodies. We just sat down for meals 3 times a day and occasionally maybe went to the Portuguese club in the little town we lived nearby for chicken and chips. And that was that really. And I had pets, and I had cats and dogs and pet mice and rabbits and chickens and all kinds of animals. I've always loved animals. And it wasn't until I came to the UK in the late 90s that I started to kind of learn more about media and the different kind of cultural aspects of life, because growing up in Zimbabwe was definitely a very sheltered life, living on a small town on the side of a mountain, near a sort of beautiful valley. There wasn't a lot going on other than, nature and school and me riding around on my little motorbike when I was a kid. But when I came to the UK, it was a huge culture shock. And one thing that really stood out to me when I first came to this country was when I went into the supermarkets and I stood in the aisles and I saw all the food. And still today, 25 years later, I was just in M&S in Brixton. It's all been renovated, and I still am overwhelmed by the volume of food and choice and options and everything that's there. And my work now with the food system really looks at like the impact of our food choices. But all those early years, I had no idea of how my individual food choices would impact my own personal health and, of course, the health of the planet. And the animals themselves, it wasn't really in my periphery, really. It wasn't until my mid to late 20s I started experiencing a lot of health issues. And I went on a bit of a journey to try to understand what was wrong with me. And my health got quite bad at the time. It was eczema, psoriasis, and lots of kind of digestive issues. So at the time I was experiencing a lot of health problems, and so I was experimenting with different diets, and I experimented with the Atkins diet. And it was interesting because I actually did feel really good on it. Like I felt really clear-headed and lots of energy, but I put on a ton of weight. And some health issues improved, and others obviously kind of raised their heads. So I was still on this journey of learning and exploring, and it was at the time when Netflix appeared in the UK as an online service. Just fast forward a little bit, I'll be jumping a few years here, so don't check me chronologically. But this platform was an amazing thing because I've always loved film and documentary, and you could just go on and watch as much as you wanted. And I watched Forks Over Knives, Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross, Food Inc., Vegucated, and I just inhaled all these documentaries. And I was blown away by the magnitude of the food system and its impact on our planet, nature, animals, and of course our health. And I was inspired by Jason Vale, who is, he calls himself the Juice Master, I think he is called in the UK. He's a kind of health teacher, health educator, and he teaches people how to improve their health by taking these fruit and vegetable juices. And we did his kind of juice fast. It's not really a fast, but you make juices. It was actually 5 different types of juices throughout the day, fruits and vegetables, mostly veg, but with a little fruit for sweetness. And we went to the supermarket to buy all the fruits and vegetables, and have this vivid memory of the checkout lady going, "Are you having a party or something?" I'm like, "No, this is my food for the week." I was just pineapple after pineapple after pineapple. And she was just looking at us thinking, "You're crazy." She said, "How are you going to eat all of this?" I'm like, "We're going to juice it." And I'd have to get up really early in the morning and make all these juices before work and take all these bottles in with me. And after 3 or 4 days, I thought I'd be starving, but I actually felt incredible. Yeah. My sinus problems cleared up. I had loads of energy. I felt very light and not kind of heavy. Throughout my life, whenever I ate, I always felt bloated and slow and sluggish. And yeah, within 3 or 4 days, I started to feel like, really like fired up. I thought, this is incredible. Anyway, at the end of this, in quotes, juice fast, we went to a pub and had a beef burger. And that beef burger was greasy and salty, as you would imagine. And that really made me feel quite unwell. And I think that was the beginning of when I started to fall out of love with eating animal products and started to realize that, what I'm putting in my body is having a very stark effect on how I feel and my wellness.
Absolutely. I have to say, I think probably most people who go kind of cold turkey, if you will, and quickly switch from eating kind of an omnivore diet to being vegan or being fully plant-based, you do have that kind of moment that you think back to and you can remember, this is actually kind of the moment or the meal that I had that made me kind of disillusioned with this. I had the same thing. I had ribs, and after that it made me ill, and I was like, you know what, that's it for me. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
But it's so true. It's amazing how you have these moments where you had this sudden shift. But my entire life I'd eaten meat with every single meal. Wow. I grew up on a farm in Zimbabwe, and eating meat and breathing air was just sort of synonymous, right? The idea of not eating animals just seemed so alien to me. I didn't even know what a vegetarian or vegan was before the ages of 25 probably. And the concept seemed so alien to me. So when I learned about how there are people that live without eating meat, I was fascinated by that. It wasn't until I watched a documentary by Sean Monson called Earthlings. And Earthlings, for those who have seen it, is you'll kind of relate that it's a very powerful film. It's narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, the Hollywood actor. And what it does, in my mind, is it kind of unlocks a realization in people's minds and really shows us how we as human beings have affected the existence of animals on this planet. You see so much violence in that film towards animals perpetrated by human beings in the name of food, fashion, transport, and entertainment, that in that concentrated kind of form in what is quite a beautiful and artistic method, because it's kind of delivering a horrific message, but in a really beautiful way. It's really cleverly done. And the script and the dialogue of the film are what make you stop and listen and pay attention, because for those that aren't vegan or plant-based, you'll have friends or family who maybe are vegan, have tried to talk to you about it, and you'll immediately become defensive. And there is good reason for that. We as human beings most of us are born into a carnistic world, and carnism is the default belief system that exists on Earth today, which suggests that eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary. And carnism as a word was coined by Dr. Melanie Joy, an American psychologist. And veganism is the counterculture to carnism. And it's what's fascinating about carnism is that it's an invisible belief system, because most people don't even realize they are within it. They don't believe they have it. Because you often hear people say, vegans are forcing their beliefs down their throats. But actually, as children, we are forced to eat animal products, because when many that don't want to eat it are told they have to, because we'll die, we'll lose our vitality, we won't have strong bones if we don't drink milk. So, this belief system is very powerful. It's been very pervasive. It's connected to many different industries in this world. And it's been part of our culture for thousands of years. Because of another concept known as speciesism, which places the value of some animals above others. Why do we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows? Which is incidentally another book which is a book by Dr. Melanie Joy. So she's a phenomenal kind of academic on this subject. So I highly recommend her books. But at that point of watching that film, I was at home and I kind of watched the film, stopped the documentary, and kind of just sat there in kind of shock. Thought about it, but then within about, I would say, 45 minutes of ending that film, I heard a screaming outside of our apartment. We lived in a kind of cul-de-sac, which is like the end, like a dead-end kind of road in the city, and someone had done something outside the front of our house. So we went outside, and I looked, and there was our next door neighbor's beautiful white Persian cat that was on the tarmac in front of the house, sort of surrounded by this pool of, red blood. And I went over to the cat, and the cat was obviously dying. And I thought to myself, I am paying other people to kill animals for me, and I can't even, in an act of mercy and compassion, take the life of this animal that is clearly suffering here on the tarmac, having been hit by a car. And that was the moment for me. That was this kind of pivotal moment when I realized that animals don't need to die for us to live and thrive as human beings. And that was a painful realization, because at the age I was, I thought, I've lived my whole life having consumed animals when I didn't need to. And that, compassion and kindness, which was my belief system at the time. I was a Buddhist, but I was a part of a Buddhist kind of a lay Buddhist movement that didn't talk about how animals are treated, and how, our compassion towards animals is often missing in our conversations. And so at that moment, to me, I aligned my belief system with my actions. And that was a huge shift for me. And from then, obviously, led me to the work I'm doing today.
I think you're absolutely right in that we're not only so disconnected from our food systems that because we don't see the cruelty to animals, like you said, not only for food, but also for entertainment, for fashion, we are able to kind of put that at the back of our mind, or so many people are able to put that at the back of their mind and kind of think, oh, it's, I can't see it, so it's not happening, or, oh, it's not that bad. And even though that was a house cat and something horrible happened to it, that the fact that you had that realization and that moment of, oh, okay, it's all the same.
There was definitely a spiritual moment there. People talk about these kind of spiritual moments that happen in life, and that was definitely one of them. Because as I stood there looking down at this poor creature in this pool of ruby red blood, my blood is the same color. And I have hair and eyes and a mouth and teeth, and we are cousins. We are related to every single animal on this planet, because we are animals, and people forget that often, don't they?
100%.
Humans are a species of great ape. And I think this is where we have reached this point of divergence from nature, is that we've forgotten that we are animals. And that along our evolution and along our journey as creatures to build this capitalist monster that we find ourselves in, we have, severed our connection to Gaia in many ways. It's there. I think obviously the connection is still there, but I do believe that our connection to Gaia being the Mother Nature, this sort of feminine energy that we see and feel and talk about when we walk through forests and we, scuba dive in beautiful coral reefs, this vibrant, life-giving energy that flows through all things. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Avatar, but Avatar really embodies that 100%. Pandora, this planet which is alive and teeming with incredible creatures, they're all connected. And, we can connect with animals in many ways. We don't have to connect to them, behind bars in zoos. We can see them in their natural world or observe them through documentary.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is something we say all the time, and I like to think that there's a little bit more of an awareness coming to this concept as well of we're not mere observers of nature, but we are nature.
Right.
But still, it's about getting people to recognize that, because like you said, it's kind of a lot of people, especially within our capitalist societies, especially, people often think, oh, we dominate the animal kingdom. We are the top of we are the apex predator. We are this, and we are all interconnected here. Absolutely. So with that in mind, with your experience in mind, then, so how did you kind of bridge that gap between what you ended up doing and what you are doing now with that? How did you make that connection?
The connection for me between what I do now and that moment was really my skill set, which is media. I thought to myself, this is so important. People need to know about this. People need to know that we don't have to kill animals to thrive as human beings. Yes, meat tastes delicious. Yes, I loved cheese and milk. These substances that we take from animals are delicious, and we cannot deny that. But are their lives so meaningless and worthless that my sensorial pleasure is worth so much more? And I really made that realization that it wasn't. As much as I loved those things, I chose not to consume them. Because often people say to you, but just have some cheese, no one's going to know. Or have a bit of bacon, nobody's going to know. And I say, I could eat that, but I choose not to.
Right, I will know.
Yeah, because I will know. This is, only person judging is me here. So I thought to myself, what can I do to talk about this stuff? And being involved in media and having worked in media and digital media of some form almost my entire career since I started in 1999 as a young web designer back in Zimbabwe, I started creating bits of content at the time, and then one sort of afternoon I was at an event called Vegan Futures, which is the beginning of an organization or an event system called Vevolution that was happening in London more recently, just before the pandemic every year. But before that, it was called Vegan Futures, and it was a kind of TED Talks for vegans. And there was loads of inspiring people there, and it was very much an opportunity to network and connect. But I was doing videography, so I was filming the event and doing the interviews and stuff.
Very cool.
And I think that's almost 12 years ago now. And I met up with everyone afterwards, after the event. And this young man came up to me afterwards and said, in a very English London-y accent, and I'm going to try my best, mate, give me your SD cards, give me your SD cards. And I was like, firstly, who are you? And secondly, no. And he said, oh, no, I'm Klaus from YouTube. I said, sorry, I don't know who you are. Turned out he had a YouTube channel that he had started, I think only several months before we met. And he was kind of talking about plant-based things and vegan things. And it was Klaus Mitchell who was the person who I founded Plant-Based News with. But before it became a company, we were hanging out, making videos together, playing around with like Facebook Live and broadcasting bits of documentaries and doing all kinds of fun stuff, and working in my spare room at home in South London for at least a year before one afternoon we got an email out of the blue from a guy called Prince Khaled Al Walid, who is a vegan prince of Saudi Arabia, an actual real vegan prince. And he sent an email saying, love what you guys are doing. I'd love to support you in some way. So first of all, we didn't know who he was. Almost deleted the email, because you get those emails from princes
Yeah.
in certain parts of the world which are not advisable to respond to. But he turned out to be legit.
Wow.
And we responded back and said, hey, thank you so much. Really honored that you've seen us and that you recognize our work, and very kind of you to reach out. He responded almost immediately and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe you replied so quickly. I didn't think you were going to respond. I'm even more impressed that you didn't just ask me for money.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that was kind of, we weren't even thinking about money. We were just like, wow, a Saudi prince.
You're just like, wow, he's a real person. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was incredible. And we stayed up all night, put together a proposal.
Wow.
3-tiered approach, bottom of the rung, middle of the range, and sort of a top of range, a good million and something to build the dream team. And he went for the sort of middle of the rung and ended up buying 30% of our company, which is obviously a lot, but 30% of nothing is still nothing.
Yeah, when you're starting, yeah.
And that was 9 years ago. Fast forward to today, PBN is now the largest vegan media platform in the world at almost 4 million followers and 85 to 90 million impressions a month across all our social channels, website and everything. And very proud of, an incredible team and all the wonderful things we've done, because we've been on many adventures to many parts of the world, meeting all the wonderful luminaries of the plant-based movement, people who've been doing it for 45 plus years, the doctors and the journalists and the environmentalists. Because it's not a new thing. I think a lot of people think that veganism is this new thing that, suddenly appeared a few years ago, but it's been around a long, long time. Even before it was called vegan,
Absolutely.
It's been a part of many different cultures for centuries.
100%.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit about what Plant-Based News shares? Like, what is it that they cover for anyone who's maybe listening who hasn't heard of it?
Plant-Based News is an impact media platform. What that means is we create content to inspire, entertain, educate, inform. And that could be celebrity news. It could be podcasts on health and nutrition. It could be information about the latest studies on, dogs and cats eating plant-based food, which is obviously highly controversial and very polarizing. But we're also talking about a lot of innovation as well in food technology, so cellular agriculture or precision fermentation. It's all about the plant-based revolution, and where it's going. But at the same time, making it fun and approachable, not too academic. Because at the time we started, there wasn't really a lot of kind of interesting vegan stuff online. There was kind of PETA and those kind of platforms, but a lot of that content feels more like a cry for help than anything else, right?
Right, absolutely.
There's a lot of very kind of divisive media about veganism in the early days. I think obviously, so for obvious reasons, right? If you spend any time in a factory farm or on a fur farm or in a slaughterhouse, you can see why people are angry and emotional and motive about these subjects. But we wanted to bring a different slant to it. We wanted to try and connect with people, open hearts and minds in a way that involved more popular culture, kind of Vice magazine, National Geographic, something a bit softer that would kind of open the door a bit more for people, so people didn't feel that, you have to be completely vegan to get this message. And our audience now are a wide variety of different types of people: vegetarians, vegans, omnivores, obviously, flexitarians, people who are actively reducing their meat consumption for health, environmental, or ethical reasons. So it's quite a mixed bag.
Yeah. That actually kind of leads into my next question. I was going to ask, because you've been basically in the plant-based digital scene since kind of before it was really trendy. I would say over the last few years it's become really trendy. How have you seen that evolution? Like you said, was it kind of you alone for a while with a lot of the activist groups and things like that, or was it kind of, did you see it as an explosion all of a sudden? How did that kind of pan out?
So the evolution of the movement has been fascinating to watch and observe, because I went vegan around 12 years ago, and at the time there was all these documentaries that were coming out, things like Cowspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
which is all about the impact of animals on the environment, how cows are reared in their billions and how they produce gargantuan amounts of methane and nitrous oxide, which is warming our planet. That was fascinating to me. And obviously millions of other people were watching these too. And I think it caused this huge burst of people to drop meat and stop animal products. And this kind of environmentalist documentary type content started appearing everywhere. And so that, I think, created a huge surge of vegans at the time. Then the pandemic hit, and I think a lot of people were spending a time at home watching documentaries and learning
Mm-hmm.
about all these different things, and it surged even more.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until just after the pandemic that the meat industry and industry started to really fight back hard.
Yeah.
And all kinds of kind of anti-vegan propaganda started appearing on social media, in the mainstream media. And that was very powerful. And it really started to have an effect. And it came out in many different ways, especially more recently with this whole ultra-processed food conversation.
Yeah.
Vegan burgers are ultra-processed. They're full of seed oils. They're bad for you. Don't eat them. Oat milk is full of seed oils. Don't eat it. And it's just bad science. The journalists are very good at creating hyperbolic claims about food and nutrition and oversimplifying things to the point of scaremongering. There's so many things at play as to what changed the formation of the movement. In the early days, there was all those documentaries influencing people in all these really positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating because, we just saw PBN explode. When we started, our website was like 2,000, 3,000 visits. By the end of like the second or third year, it was like 1 million uniques a month.
Wow.
Because so many people were watching these documentaries and then going on Google and kind of looking for answers, and we were there providing them.
Mm-hmm.
But industry then responded,
Yeah.
not just because of PBN, but because obviously that people were, millions of people were starting to cut back on meat. And so industry was like, what can we do? So yeah, it was fascinating to see, but it was also scary to see the power of industry and how quick it was able to make these changes with advertising and influencing popular culture and media,
Mm-hmm.
and push back, which obviously resulted in, a lot of people going back to eating animal products, which I feel mostly comes down to kind of peer pressure.
Yeah.
And societal pressure, because 99% of people eat animal products and
Mm-hmm.
animals generally, and 1% or 1 to 2% are animal free. So
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. The spread of misinformation, obviously has continued now to today, and certain people in leadership positions also push a lot of misinformation. And if you look at like what you were talking about with kind of societally, the big dairy, if you will, for example, if you look at some of the lawsuits that have come out, for example, in France, they said that they couldn't, vegan brands could not label their packaging as cheese or as yogurt or as milk, which I think was a big one as well. They couldn't use MILK for the packaging, which is insane. And I think that has definitely influenced a lot of already maybe kind of hyper masculine cultures as well. For example, when you talk about sectors, I think especially in hyper masculine sectors like finance or things where there's not a lot of women, not a lot of people of color in these sectors, it's kind of helped push that narrative, not necessarily to be the smartest or the most knowledgeable or the most popular even, but they're the loudest. So I think that is what a lot of people are seeing and hearing, especially in media.
yeah.
So with all this misinformation out there, you have also started to venture into a new project as well to kind of help combat this.
Yeah, wow, what a monster it is. So at the end of this last year, I became increasingly frustrated with the amount of misinfo that we were seeing in the mainstream media, outdoor media, so advertising, and social media. Every day I was waking up to an email or a WhatsApp or something from people saying, oh my God, another article saying that vegans are going to die from eating plant-based meat, or oat milk is like Coca-Cola, or orange juice is packed with sugar because it's got fructose or something like that. Just a lot of stuff, scaremongering about food. More recently, there's this whole kind of craze or trend of people walking around supermarkets and swearing at various fruits and vegetables, saying broccoli contains anti-nutrients, it's bad for you. So, and there
Madness.
there's a bit of a pattern with a lot of these people. They're unqualified, completely untrained when it comes to nutritional science, and they are behaving in ways which are, frankly, in my opinion, should be illegal. Giving out health advice, nutrition advice to the public. There's a guy called Eddie Abu who often says to people things like, you should be eating meat. He's also been trying to encourage people to eat raw meat. He said something about Weetabix the other day, which is like a very healthy food that is bullshit. If I may swear.
Yes, you may.
Eddie thinks Weetabix is bullshit. A lot of these types of individuals, there's somebody called the glucose goddess. She is obsessed with glucose spikes. And a normal human being, whenever we eat food, our body responds in certain ways. And one of those ways is a glucose spike. When we eat foods that have carbohydrate or glucose in them, the glucose will spike, and then your pancreas kicks in, puts insulin into your blood, and that insulin pulls the glucose out. Because obviously, if you had diabetes, that process wouldn't happen, and you would die. That could kill you. Especially if the glucose stays high.
Right.
And that's why people wear those glucose monitors if they have diabetes. But there's been this craze recently of people wearing these monitors, monitoring their glucose spikes, and becoming a little obsessive with this type of reaction. And it's quite a normal part of human physiology. But one of the interesting tactics with these types of characters is they scaremonger, like create fear, and then provide a handy solution. And what's Jessie's solution, glucose goddess, is a handy bottle of anti-glucose spike pills for X euros that she has available on her social media.
Yeah.
But because these people are operating on social media, which is the Wild West at the moment.
Yeah, truly unregulated.
I just had enough of it. And I thought, what, PBN is running itself really well, got an amazing team. Now's the time to do something else. And end of last year, the Freedom Food Alliance was born.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the Freedom Food Alliance is a non-profit entity, and its role really is to bring awareness and education to the public about the food that we eat, where it comes from, the effect it has on us, and our ability to make those choices. People can only make good choices when they're informed.
Absolutely.
And if they're constantly being misinformed wherever they look, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, social media, billboards, people are constantly being pushed in directions away from a diet that is better for them. And there is a lot of clarity about what a good diet is. And this is not about vegan or not vegan. This is about a diet predominantly of whole plant foods. The science and the science literature and nutrition literature says, if you look at it and you talk to the majority of people, vegans and non-vegans, a diet that is mostly plants with relatively small amounts of animal products is perfectly healthy. And you look at places like the blue zones around the world, this is how people eat, mostly fruits and vegetables, whole foods, with very small amounts of meat in their diets.
If at all, absolutely.
If at all. And these people live to 100 plus. So the data and the science is there, but yet industry, which is a multi-billion pound industries, whether they are meat, milk, eggs, etc., fish, aquaculture, they have a economic and financial imperative to keep the public eating and buying as much meat, milk, eggs, fish, etc. as possible. And they will do anything to keep us eating in this way. People often say, but humans have always eaten meat. Yes, we have always eaten meat. But it was always quite scarce for us as creatures, and we mostly lived on, roots, nuts, seeds, tubers, all these types of things. And actually, there is a lot of emerging kind of historical and biological science that says that our brains were able to evolve to the size they are because of carbohydrates, these kind of cooking of foods. Because, what does your brain run on? Glucose.
Glucose, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the most glucose-hungry organs. I think it's the most glucose-hungry organ in the body. And so there's a lot of misrepresentation of our evolution. You often hear people say, but I'm eating this ancestral diet. you know.
Yeah.
An ancestral diet didn't include a trip to Tesco's, I'm afraid. You know?
Yeah, huge mega farm processed meats. Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely
You know,
not.
98%, I think, up to 98% of meat consumed in the United States is factory farmed, and about 82 to 87% here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of like meat is natural, and I'm just going to the supermarket to get my naturally acquired meat is BS.
Right.
Because most people now are eating animal products that are being acquired in the most environmentally destructive, horrifically cruel, and agriculturally intensive methods that have ever existed.
And quickly to touch on also in terms of misinformation and the lack of regulation when it comes to terminology as well. When you have things, constantly being labeled organic, grass-fed, free range, all these things, these are some of the most unregulated terms, especially in the US with the USDA and the FDA constantly managing different sectors of the agricultural world. These are things that also are pushing people in different directions. They don't know where to go. They think, oh, grass-fed's better. What is grass-fed? Grass-fed could mean grass has been poured into a big trough while these cows are still stuck in their stations. There's so much kind of ambiguity with these things, and that's a huge problem, obviously. And so that's something that, hopefully Freedom Food Alliance can address as well.
Because, at the end of the day, most of us live our lives. We don't really have a lot of time to learn about all this stuff, and we certainly don't learn very much at school.
Right.
And I think, there's two parts of this conversation. There is system change and there's behavioral change, and both need to happen. And the two parts of what we do, the Freedom Food Alliance, is about having hard conversations with politicians, journalists, CEOs in food companies, the decision makers in the food system, and also the people who are making it as well, the farmers, the people who are involved in actually the production.
100%.
And my plan is to create content and share stories of that stuff, and also start challenge the status quo within government by publishing research reports and data. And we did publish a disinformation report this last February, which really uncovers huge amounts of disinformation coming out of the animal big ag businesses. And our new report, which will be coming out this year, is called Nutrition Misinformation in the Digital Age, and looking at these health influencers, or misinfluencers as we call them. And then on the other side is foodfacts.org. This is our consumer awareness platform. This is aimed at the public. It's about behavioral change, individuals. What can we do? How can we learn more about how our food affects our health, how it affects the planet? All these choices have all these repercussions. And how can we build a platform that is free from commercial agendas, and really focuses on the food system itself, and improving media literacy, learning about fact checking, learning about nutrition literacy as well, because to be honest, like, most people have very little awareness and knowledge of nutrition, and they get that knowledge from the media, from social media. In fact, most young people today are getting most of their knowledge from TikTok, which is littered with very unqualified, untrained people,
TikTok doctors,
who often are spreading trends that could be potentially harmful, or sometimes even fatal.
Absolutely. So foodfacts.org, can you tell us about how that will work if it's the consumer-facing arm of Freedom Food Alliance?
Foodfacts.org is a consumer awareness platform that is designed to be fun, approachable, conversational, not academic, and that is going to be a place for fact checks and features, guides, and information about the food system itself, everything within it, whether that's food waste, pesticides, fungicides, all these things. What's the difference between organic or not? Should I be eating organic food? Is it a waste of money to buy organic food? What's the truth? Is there even a truth? Do you even know the answer? Because, you ask, it depends on who you ask.
Right.
Some people say organic food is a waste of money. These people say it's really important because of pesticides are bad for our gut microbiome. You speak to these people over here that say the pesticides are so minuscule on the food, it doesn't matter. It's as long as you wash your food, you're fine. So who do you believe? So it's so hard to make decisions these days, and there's so much anxiety around food for people, and young people today are really struggling, and that the amounts of eating disorders in this country, I believe, I spoke to someone recently, has almost doubled in the last 20 years.
Really?
And I think it is in part because of a culture of fear around food, and orthorexia is a term that came to the fore only in the last sort of couple of decades, and this obsession with purity and eating clean, and we often forget, like human beings, we are highly emotional creatures. We're not logical at all. So a big part of our work is looking at how can we talk to people on an emotional level, not just on a logical level. You can present facts to people, and most of the time they won't believe you.
Right.
Look at the climate crisis.
Yeah.
So this is where the power of documentary and art and music and culture are essential. We have to find smart, clever ways to connect with people from a heart level, not just from the brain. The brain is the numbers, the statistics, the data, but most people don't respond to any of that stuff.
Right.
Some do, and those people need to read the fact checks and understand the hard data and the sources, all of that. But a lot of people most humans respond to an emotive connection to an idea or a thought.
100%.
And so food facts is not just going to be about fact checks and data. It's also going to be about entertainment and making people laugh and using comedy and memes and all the stuff we did at PBN. I'm going to sort of use those same techniques and methods, which is going to take some time to find our groove, because we only started in January, so it's been exactly a year since I began. But the plan really is to try to use those popular cultural methods to build an audience, build trust, and help people understand that, every time we sit down and choose something to eat, it either helps or harms us physically or helps or harms our planet. And that, the information is there if we want to look for it, but it's hard to cut through the noise because of all the conflicting opinions. And often hidden in those opinions are agendas that we as the public cannot see. So our job is to try to help you understand, if someone is telling you X, is there an agenda behind that, or is that actually factual or not?
That's another thing. Also, I feel like oftentimes, especially on social media, opinion is often masqueraded as fact. And if someone comes across as really confident in what they're saying, oh yes, this is true, this is true, this is true. All of that could be opinion or personal perception, but it's not fact.
Right.
And that's absolutely fueling, I think, the misinformation.
Absolutely. There's a psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, coined by, as you would expect, psychologist Dunning-Kruger. And the simple principle is, the less you know, the more you think you know. And you see that in the likes of sort of politicians. The incumbent American president exhibits this type of behavior as well, talking on subjects that he knows nothing about, but talking with such confidence and conviction that his audience and the people that love and adore him, they believe him because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. But then the people who really know their stuff, the scientists, the biologists, environmentalists, they experience the opposite, which is known as the imposter syndrome. Right. Where people who know a lot, but they feel a lack of confidence in their own abilities, so they don't feel qualified to speak, despite the fact that they are the most qualified person in the room to speak. Right. And this is where good science communication has got to come in. I personally believe the modern environmentalist movement has failed because we haven't got enough good science communicators. You got, people like the amazing Bill Nye, the science guy. Those types of people are phenomenal at communicating science, but they are a tiny, tiny group of people. Obviously, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. It's very hard, and the system needs to change for us to become more ethical as people. But I think when we can try to educate people and teach them that the system, the capitalist system that we live in, that is kind of constantly pushing you to eat more, buy more, take more, do more. Yeah.
You need this.
Yeah, you need more to be more. Yeah. This is an illusion. And it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's really only going to take us in one direction, which is down.
Yeah, right. No, 100%. I think you phrased that beautifully. Off the back of all of that, what is one thing you hope listeners of this can walk away with, maybe to feel more optimistic about the future of what Freedom Food Alliance and foodfacts.org is going to bring, or even just something you want them to know about food and the food system in general?
I would say the most important thing is that when you are getting information through whatever channel it is from a person, always ask yourself, could this person be misleading me? And what is their agenda? Look at who's funding them. Are they trying to sell you something? Do they talk in absolutes? Do they overstate things potentially? Are their videos loaded with all kinds of clever effects? And enigmatic music, or do they present the facts clearly and calmly without any kind of tricks? I think that's the most important thing, because we all are busy people. We don't have a lot of time. Most of us are very, very busy in full lives, so we don't have a lot of time to kind of dissect things. But if you are unsure about something, it's important to check multiple sources.
Yep.
And if you see the same answers or the same kind of statistics information from multiple trusted sources, and trusted sources are usually organizations that have been around a long time, they have accreditation, international they're regulated. So like press, for example, if they're members of international press regulators, they usually have standards that they adhere to. They usually clearly mark when they make corrections to their articles. PBN is the only vegan media platform that's press regulated by Impress. If we make mistakes, we clarify it. We say at the bottom of articles, all our funding sources and who owns the company is all on our About Us page. It's all very transparent. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Look for transparency in the information that you're getting from different people.
Vital.
Yeah, and be more wary of social media influencers.
True.
It might sound exciting and fun to be told, eat bacon and butter with every breakfast.
With a glass of raw milk as well.
With a glass of raw milk. Yeah. But, these types of things, even though many people will say these are delicious foods, you could be potentially harming yourself if you're consuming these foods in high quantities. And when it comes to meat products, things like beef, if you are personally consuming high quantities of beef, not only are you increasing your chances of colorectal cancer, but you're also harming the planet, because cows are incredibly environmentally intensive to rear, whether they are on a grass-fed farm, a regenerative agricultural farm, or they're on a CAFA, a concentrated animal feedlot. These animals produce methane, large quantities of it through their unfortunate burps and farts. So our food choices have huge impact. And also, if I may finally say, no one's perfect.
No.
And it's important that we just do as much as we can do. I'm not sitting here saying you need to be vegan, you need to change your life immediately. Just make those changes to where you feel comfortable. Add a little more plants to your meals. Make sure you're having a diversity of plants on your plate. And maybe try 1 or 2 meat-free meals a week. That will make a big difference, and it all adds up.
Absolutely. There's a good friend of ours, Christabel Reed. She's the co-founder of Earthed, which is like the platform that teaches basically nature skills to people to get them back into regeneration. And one point she also emphasizes always is joy, bringing joy back to what we do. And I think that applies a lot here too, bringing joy back to what we consume. When there's death and fear involved in the things that we're eating, we internalize these things. Our body picks up on these hormone receptors and all these different things. So I don't know about you, but when I go to the supermarket and I see abundant fruits and vegetables, or if I go to a farm, that's something that really excites me. And like you said, people are busy at the end of a long day. People have kids. People have long hour shifts at their jobs. There has to be a better way. And I think, like you said, looking for people that are speaking the truth, not with this hyperbole and with this kind of grandeur. Oh, I have the only solution for you. I think that's definitely the key thing to look out for. One final thing I want to touch on as well, because you mentioned this in terms of you don't have to be perfect, but just incorporating more plants or putting more plants on your plate is probably one of the best things you can do for yourself and for the planet. This episode is being released in January, which is also known as Veganuary.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about Veganuary? Because I believe you were involved in that from kind of its early stages.
Yes. So I'm really good friends with Matthew Glover and Jane Land, who are the founders of Veganuary. Veganuary. A lot of people struggle to say the name, which was always a funny thing. The January and a bunch of other strange pronunciations. But the principle with that is a bit like Stoptober or a Movember. It's a full month where people drop all animal products to try vegan for a month. So try the plant-based diet for a month, and it has been a huge success. I think in the first year there were maybe like 3,000 people to do it. Wow. Last year I think there were 700,000 people that did it.
Wow.
It's been around for I want to say maybe 11 years.
I believe it was 2014 when it started, so probably about 10 years.
And it's a phenomenal success because even though 700,000 people register on the website, on average 10 other people do the challenge with that one person who registers.
Wow.
Plus, there are potentially millions of other people that do it every January that don't register,
Right.
that don't even realize that Veganuary is actually a campaign and it's actually a thing. They just think of it like a alcohol-free...
Like a challenge,
Yeah. So it's been hugely popular in getting the idea of a meat-free diet into the mainstream media. Every year, every January, there was media and press everywhere. And it was, played a huge role here in the UK in supermarkets and retailers and restaurants having vegan menus, but also more vegan replacement products. Obviously, since the success of all of this stuff, as I said earlier, industry responded back by clapping back even harder and pushing back with a lot of misinformation that you see in mainstream media, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the New York Post. These publications are, I guess, big hitters when it comes to pushing this type of media out because they're so sensationalist in the way they write. Veganuary was so successful, and then industry responded back, which kind of hammered it down. And it has, to be really honest, it has taken the wind out of the movement. There has been a big kind of, what's the word, slowdown, or maybe the plateauing of the movement in many ways, I feel. Mostly because it's become very mainstream. It's no longer like this strange thing. Everyone's talking about it. You can get vegan meals and stuff everywhere. But the kind of mainstream vegan movement did take a bit of a bashing and has done, mostly because of COVID. The organizing of things kind of became a bit disconnected.
Yeah.
But people are organizing and getting themselves back together, and the movement generally, in my opinion, is becoming much more professional. People are being much more polished in the way they deliver things. More organizations are being formed, like the Freedom Food Alliance, like foodfacts.org. Those types of things are happening more and more because people have realized, look, we live and exist within a capitalist system. Activism is amazing, but to actually dismantle these systems, we need to work within them.
Absolutely.
With the rules and frameworks that currently exist. Direct action is incredible, but sometimes I feel like we're fighting an uphill battle with that type of activity, because I very much see the animal agricultural movement as a bit like a monolith. It's this giant, monstrous edifice propped up by these pillars, and the monolith sits above, which is industrialized animal and aquaculture. And direct action and activism that involves kind of attacking the system is very much like throwing rocks at the monolith above.
Right.
But the pillars that prop up the monolith are education, advertising, government, and these kind of entities that have been around for generations are powerful forces that reinforce the monolith in its kind of cultural connection with humanity. Because going back to the word carnism, carnism is so deeply entwined within our culture, and it has been for generations of thousands of years, and it's kind of like it has roots. And the only way that we're able to, kill the roots of a tree, to use an idea, is to actually get into the roots of the tree rather than attacking the branches.
Right.
The branches being the side effects or the results of
the
that,
repercussions
the growth, the repercussions, And so to shift our world and to change our entire society to a more plant-forward food system, we have to work within the system. We need doctors, dietitians, lawyers, politicians. We need people who think with green minds in these systems, working within the pillars to dismantle them from within, like the kind of Trojan horse in a way. That's the only way that we're ever going to be able to change things, in my opinion, because the system itself is very powerful, and it's propped up and held up by greed, the thirst for power, and it's important that we need to infiltrate.
We absolutely overthrow. No, but I completely agree with you. I think we always say that the solution to pretty much all of the world's issues is a 4-part thing. It's governance, it's advocacy, it's education, and it's individual action. And so when all those things can work together, if we can get all those things to work together, then real change can happen.
Absolutely.
So on a final note, we could talk for hours, but on a final note, just touching back on Veganuary, because I didn't realize that in addition to the pledges, they do a lot of advocacy work and like corporate outreach in terms of trying to get more companies to make or produce plant-based products in addition to maybe their other products if they are animal-based. What is one thing that anyone listening, if they want to take part in Veganuary, what's one suggestion you could give for them to try it out?
So Veganuary isn't as hard as it sounds. I think there's a lot of fear around stopping eating animal products because you're going to miss the food that you love. But despite what you've heard in the media, plant-based products, especially some of the more recent ones, which have clean labels, so have less ingredients, are much better for you. They don't have antibiotics and heavy metals like a lot of fish are very polluted with things like mercury.
At the end of the day, it's all plants.
Yeah, exactly. And that, these products have been created as a solution to some of the problems that we have, increased disease, lifestyle disease because of people eating too many animal products, environmental destruction of animal agriculture. A lot of the people behind these companies that are making these plant-based products like Oatly, like Juicy Marbles, an incredible vegan steak that you can buy in Sainsbury's. These foods are made by incredibly passionate people who really care about making food better and having a lighter impact on the planet. So, go check out your local supermarket, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Lidl. They all have loads of great products, but you don't have to live on processed food,
right?
To switch to a plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is a plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is not Beyond Burgers,
right?
And I think there's this misconception that to be a vegan, that we're all living on vegan burgers and vegan chicken nuggets, but
things that can be more expensive for people as well.
But lentils, pulses, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, fruits and vegetables. These foods are all plant-based, and we all eat them, and we've always eaten them anyway. I think learning how to cook is a big part of making a shift as well.
True.
When you grow up on a meat and 2 veg diet, it's very easy to throw a piece of meat in a pan, boil some vegetables or steam them, and there's your meal. A plant-based diet can be a little more challenging because you also need to double the amount of food you eat because plants aren't as calorific as animal products. So you'll find that your plates are double the size. Don't be afraid. Just eat.
It's good. Just eat it.
It's good. You need all that. It's good for you, all that fiber and all those phytonutrients. And just have fun with it. Like, go and experiment. The Plant-Based News website is packed with hundreds of vegan and plant-based recipes. We even have a dedicated Instagram account called PBN Food, which is all about all the new fun innovation and technology. And I think the best thing you can do is go and learn about how a plant-based diet can be beneficial to your physiology, how it can improve many of your potential health outcomes, and how it affects the planet. How when you switch to a plant-based diet, you halve your freshwater footprint by up to 50%. And your carbon footprint by up to like 78%.
Wow.
So there are so many benefits and positives to it. And but the hardest bit is your friends and family. We still live in a society that's 99% mostly meat eating, I would say. And those are the biggest challenges. So when your friends and family challenge you, be ready with some answers. Why are you doing this? Why do you care about it? Why it matters to you? And they might come at you with these, vegan is over-processed and vegan is junk food. And is just not true.
Right.
Yes, you can have Beyond Burgers and Oatly and all these types of products. But then people who eat meat eat a lot of highly processed foods as well.
Exactly.
Cheetos and McDonald's and, processed food is everywhere. It's not something that you should be afraid of. It's learning to eat whole foods as much as possible, and if you are going to have some junk food, keep it to a minimum
in moderation.
In moderation. So have fun with it. Don't be afraid. And if you don't go fully vegan by the end of Veganuary, then that's not it's not the end of the world. But keep adding more plants to your diet and experimenting with food, because obviously you can have a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. Small steps are still steps.
Absolutely.
And for every faux influencer that we've talked about today spewing misinformation, there are also so many great creators out there, I think, especially in the food space, at least in the UK, London food space. I've found so many amazing vegan content creators. Yeah. So if you're looking for recipes alongside the Plant-Based News website, there's also great, if you just go on Instagram and search vegan, and then whatever dish you're craving, you will find an alternative, or 12 recipes or 1,000 recipes for that. So thank you so much, Robbie. Is there anywhere people can go to check out the work you're doing?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Robbie_Lockie. And yeah, that's where I am mostly. Obviously, Freedom Food Alliance and foodfacts.org, DOTORG on Instagram. We're on other platforms, but haven't really got haven't got the cadence going yet.
Gotcha.
Very much kind of getting the website up and getting content out. Our Instagram account's quite popular because mostly we just share viral fruit and veg content, which gets millions of views. Who knew people love fruit and veg so much?
Right.
But yeah, we're kind of really just getting started with all our fact checking and all of that. So it's a bit of an exciting journey. So looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to see what's to come. Thank you so much, Robbie.
My pleasure.